A study is casting new doubts about the concern over students getting pushed out by charter schools. Using data from the state, researchers at Pioneer Institute found the attrition rate for charter schools was lower than it was for district public schools. Our guest is one of the authors for the study, a senior fellow with the Institute, Cara Candal. Thank you very much for being with us, Cara.
Thank you.
Before we get into any of the numbers and trends here, some things have been going on around charter schools about the students that they're including in their enrollment and how they're supposed to be keeping them.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2010, the state started holding all schools more accountable for looking at who's coming and going from schools. And this was on the heels of an argument made mainly by charter school detractors saying, hey, maybe these schools are getting better results because they're not keeping students. And it's a very important thing to look at. I think it's a very important argument. And so the state started holding all schools accountable for doing that, and charter schools included in that had to really look closely at not only who was staying in schools once enrolled, but who they were attracting. And so we've seen since 2010 a very important increase in the number of students with special needs, including English language learners who are attending charter schools. And we've also been able, although we didn't have really great data before 2010, we've been able to ascertain the extent to which charter schools and indeed their district counterparts are keeping students. And one of the things that we find in this report, in this report, we use publicly available data from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, along with other more comprehensive reports that have been published by folks like researchers like Elizabeth Cetrin out of MIT. And one of the things that we find is not only are charters enrolling all students at greater rates, students with special needs, but they're keeping all students at increasingly high rates. And in fact, in many places are doing so either at parity with their district counterparts or at greater rates than their district counterparts, meaning that from year to year, which is how we define attrition, that from year to year, fewer students are leaving charter schools to move to other schools.
And one thing to make clear about attrition, this could mean leaving a school for any reason.
Any reason, which is really important and difficult for schools to capture, right? Because if schools are held accountable for how many students are leaving them, they need to know, is this student leaving because he or she is moving to Ohio? Or is this student leaving because he or she is dissatisfied with the school in some way? And it's an important thing for the state to try and figure out too, because what we don't want is any school, district, charter, otherwise, to make students feel unwelcome or to, as charters have long been accused of, push students out for some reason.
So talk about the numbers, because they're fairly close if you look at attrition for district schools and for charter schools. We don't want to get too far into the decimal points here, but the figures actually do look pretty almost the same.
They look almost the same. So if we look statewide at charter schools statewide versus district schools statewide, which can be a little bit misleading because charters tend to be concentrated in urban centers, you find that what DESE refers to, that's the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, as the weighted attrition rate. And again, attrition is only students who are leaving over the summer, between years. It's about the same, slightly higher attrition for charter schools overall. But when we take a look at Boston, for example, where the majority of charter schools in this state are concentrated, we find that the attrition rate for charter schools in Boston is actually slightly lower than the attrition rate for schools in the Boston Public School District. And so I think it's really important to characterize this appropriately, right? If you think about most charter schools, they tend to be very small schools, almost like think about a boutique school. Yet when we compare each one individual charter school, we compare that school to the district at large. So students can theoretically move among the Boston Public School District, among schools within that district, and not necessarily count as leaving the district. Right? But they can move from school to school, and that data would not be captured. If a student leaves a charter school, which is one school is considered its own district, immediately it looks as though that charter is losing students. So it's, in many ways, it's an unfair comparison, but even with that unfair comparison, we find that weighted attrition for charter schools in Boston is lower, slightly lower.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Cara Candal from the Pioneer Institute. Of course, as the study points out, one of the reasons for attrition from the district schools is that students get into a charter school.
Yes.
And is that any worse than a student leaving a middle school to go to Boston Latin?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I would argue no, and we do see these spikes in attrition from the district at certain grade levels, which roughly correspond with the entry points for different charter schools. And I like to think about it sort of as you've pointed out. We don't punish. We don't talk negatively, for example, if a student leaves the Boston Public Schools to attend Brookline Public Schools or moves somewhere. But it seems to be a different story for some when we talk about students leaving the district school to go to a charter school. And the district is losing that student and losing the money, the per pupil funding that comes with that student either way. So it's often a different dynamic when we talk about charters versus leaving.
Now there are these points where you see more attrition from charters. What did you learn from that, or at least what you read into it?
Well, that's a really tough question. So we'd have to really rely on anecdotal evidence. Some of what I've seen after doing this for about 10 years is, and I think that a lot of folks who operate charter schools are very honest about this, is that when students enter a charter high school environment, especially later in their educational career, say a student comes to a charter school from any other school, could be a Catholic school, could be a district school, and enters a charter school at 9th grade. If, as in any other school, district or any other school that's not a charter, if the culture of that school is somehow very different than what the student is used to, and or if the expectations, meaning for performance or something else, is fundamentally different, students may not feel that they can cut it at the school, or they simply may not like the school. One of the things that many charter operators that I know are very clear about is, for example, they will say, we do not practice social promotion here. Which means that, as is often the case, if a student enters a charter school in the 9th grade, coming in at a 6th or 7th grade reading level or math level, that charter will be very honest and say to that student, it might take you 5 years to graduate. We will get you up to speed, but this could take a little bit longer. And to a lot of students, that's a really tough sell. The other thing that can be a really tough sell to students is, again, charter schools tend to be very small places. They don't have a lot of the extracurriculars that districts can have. Sports teams, the feel of a really big comprehensive high school, which some students like. And that can be a pain point for charters when it comes to keeping students. So sometimes what we see is attrition either right at the beginning, at the enrollment year, or attrition, quite frankly, sometimes after students have passed MCAS and have that degree in hand and don't necessarily want to persist in an environment that might hold them to a higher set of expectations. Now, I don't say that, Chris, to suggest that Boston Public Schools on the whole somehow has lower expectations. It's a school-to-school comparison, not some monolithic, district-to-school comparison.
What about the increasing numbers of language learners and students with learning disabilities who are in charter schools? How are they doing as far as attrition?
They're doing well. So we cite in here a study that was conducted by Elizabeth Cetrin at MIT. And this is a really important study because it's what's considered the gold standard of charter school research, meaning that she uses an approach, a randomized control trial, comparing students who were admitted to charter schools via lottery to students who applied to the lottery but were not admitted. So we have sort of this control for selection bias. And one of the things that she finds is not only that students with special needs, as they enroll in charters, do they outperform their counterparts in the district, which we discussed in another report, but also that students with special needs are similarly or less mobile in charter schools as they are in the district, meaning they're just as likely or even a little bit less likely to leave the charter school once enrolled.
And one of the things that maybe is not so wonderful is that the dropout rate for charters is pretty much what it is for the district schools. We want them all to improve, so what should be done about that?
Oh, I wish I had the answer to the question. I think one of the biggest challenges for any school when it comes to dropout is that, especially in our urban centers, we are serving a highly mobile student population. So we can talk about attrition, which is one measure of student movement, but mobility is a much larger concept. And so we can look, for example, district schools have a much greater rate of what we would call churn, which is movement throughout the school year. And charters don't always have to take students past a certain date. District schools don't really have much of a choice, right? They take who comes to them when they come to them. This kind of mobility makes it difficult, not just for teachers and administrators, it makes it difficult for the students who are mobile. And students are mobile for many reasons in our communities. But it also makes it very difficult for the students who are in the school, who are constantly getting new peers coming into their classrooms, right? So teachers might be playing catch up, so to speak. Or there's just this disruption of students constantly in and out, which research shows contributes to a higher dropout rate. So that's one of the things we could start thinking about.
Your study also touched on one concern that I've heard complained about by district school parents and by charter school parents with kids on the waiting list, and that is about backfilling. When you have these vacancies that come up in the course of the year, the seats don't always get filled, so how to do better than that?
Yeah. Well, increasingly, what we find is that charter schools are backfilling more and more. It used to be that they didn't have to backfill much at all. Since 2010, they've been held to account to backfill until later in the year. I think for most schools, it's February. You'll find that for a couple reasons, most charters are backfilling all year long. They're doing it all year long. One reason is that the state has made it clear that whether or not they have to, it's a very desirable thing to do because of long wait lists and because of just parity. Districts are accountable. They have to do that. They have no choice. And the other reason is, interestingly, as we have more, for example, charter high schools in Boston, there are simply more seats available. So charter schools, especially at the high school level, some are finding that they have seats available and they actually need to meet enrollment. So they're quite often going back to those wait lists more frequently, bringing kids off the wait list and doing that further and further into the year. The argument used to be that backfilling could be disruptive to a school's culture. As district schools well know. And now I think that charters are figuring out ways to minimize that disruption while still bringing more students in. Again, though, we need to remember that charter schools, because they tend to be small, don't have the same capacity to fill seats as a lot of our larger district schools do.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Sure, thank you.
Cara Candal from the Pioneer Institute.